Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the Council on Linkages between Academia and Public Health Practice and the National Board of Public Health Examiners for a webinar presentation this afternoon focused on changes to the Certified in Public Health, the Cph Certification Program. This webinar will provide an opportunity to learn more about the Cph program and the upcoming changes to the exam. My name is Kathleen Amos, and I am the Assistant Director for Academic Practice Linkages at the Public Health Foundation. And on behalf of the Public Health Foundation and the Council on Linkages between Academia and Public Health Practice, I would like to welcome our presenters for this webinar, Certification Program Manager, Kate Brundage, and Allison Foster, President of the National Board of Public Health Examiners. So as we go through the webinar this afternoon, if you have a question, please feel free to key the questions into the question and answer box, which you'll find on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We will leave time, probably about 15 minutes, towards the end of the webinar for Q&A. And in addition, we wanted to let you know that the broadcast today is being recorded, and we will send a follow-up email after the webinar to everyone with a link to the recorded presentation for future playback and any additional follow-up questions. Thank you. Kate, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kathleen. Welcome, everyone. I wanted to tell you today about the Certified in Public Health. The Cph Credential is the only one of its kind for public health that demonstrates not only your knowledge of key public health sciences, but also your commitment to the field through continuing education focused on emerging and established public health issues. The #1 vision of the MBPHE is to professionalize the field of public health through and raise the visibility of the field itself. We want to create an elite community of certified graduates, working professionals, faculty, leaders, and pioneers in public health. We strive to do this by administering the only public health examination that encompasses all of the core and cross-cutting areas of public health. The Cph Credential, like most certifications, demonstrates dedication and commitment to the field of public health beyond your education and into the workforce. It also includes a vision of having a core standard body of knowledge for public health professionals to follow, and lastly, to promote continuing education and lifelong learning. The Cph and the public health profession. The Cph increases professionalism and helps you build your career. It provides evidence of mastery of core skills and knowledge. There's potential salary increases and promotions involved with the Cph. And most importantly, it assures the community that which you serve and protect that you've met and maintained a national standard. Since 2008, 6,049 individuals have successfully passed the Cph exam. The Cph has been awarded to 5,534 leaders and professionals in public health. 551 provisional Cph professionals are in our system at any given time. We have 2,000 applicants in the pipeline at any given time. Currently, there are 10 schools and programs that require the Cph examination for graduation. There are 13 schools and programs who offer a discount for the Cph exam, along with 7 organizations who strongly encourage their members or their personnel to get certified with the Cph. Using and requiring the exam. As I told you that we have 10 schools and programs that are requiring Cph for graduation. Students and alumni will not earn their MPH without achieving Cph certification first. And this tells us that the Cph exam tests knowledge and competency that a graduate level student or alumni should know in order to graduate with an MPH and work in the field of public health. So the Cph should be the next stop after earning the MPH in order to earn a leadership role in public health. These are the schools that participate in our program where they dedicate 20 to 30% of their student body to sit for the Cph examination. And we have 7 organizations that are promoting the credential within their staff, within their departments, and within their membership. standard fees of a CPH is $385. For large organizational groups or schools and programs of public health that offer about 20 to 30% of their graduating class, will earn a discount of $315 for the exam with additional study materials at no additional cost. And lastly, schools and programs that require the CPH examination extend a discount of $250, and they also receive free study materials. So ASCPH has a job board called Public Health Jobs, and we're starting to see that employers are putting a preference or requirement for the CPH in their job postings. Employers are using the CPH as a tool, as a hiring tool, and the CPH is it shows that you take time out of your career and that you're dedicated and serious about the field, that you outshine your competitors in the profession, and that you prove that you've mastered all core and cross-cutting areas of key contemporary public health sciences. It shows that you go above and beyond your education by preparing and sitting for a voluntary examination and maintaining the Cph credential with continuing education. So these are the some of the organizations right now that are putting job listings on ASCPH jobs, and they're either putting a preference or a requirement for the CPH. And this is really driving the credential forward in the field of public health. More employers are willing to pay for their staff or their members to go and get certified with the CPH. More employers are getting salary increases as well as promotions. And a new addition to the CPH is called the Cph Boot Camp. Currently, all the ASCPH fellows are interested in sitting for the CPH. So we've set up a specific course for them, a 2-day learning course, where the ASCPH fellows can sit in a room with expert faculty and learn about the core areas and cross-cutting areas of public health to prepare for the CPH examination. On the last day of the exam, on the last day of the boot camp, everyone will be tested with the CPH by mobile units, which is where our testing vendor will come in with computers, and everyone will sit for the CPH exam in the same room and receive their scores the same day. We also do this 2-day learning course at APHA every year at their annual meeting. And this year it will be held in Atlanta. The Cph Learning Institute will be held from Saturday, November 4th from 9 to 5 and Sunday, November 5th from 8:30 to 5:30. And then the Cph exam will be offered Monday, November 6th following the 2-day learning course. Registration for this opens June 1st. So there's some changes to the eligibility. The first step in the certification process is to determine your eligibility. CEF, the Council on Education for Public Health and Graduate Students, CEPH alumni, and public health individuals who have worked in the field of public health for a minimum of 5 years, who have a bachelor's degree. Your next step after determining eligibility and registering for the exam is to study and prepare and sit for the 200-question Cph exam. And lastly, after you're awarded certification, you have to maintain the credential. Every 2 years, you'll maintain the credential with 50 continuing education credits and abiding by the Code of Ethics. We're also a proud member of the Institute for Credentialing Excellence. So exam eligibility, alumni. All graduates of CEPH accredited schools and programs of public health are eligible to sit for the CPH exam. When an alumni sits for the CPH exam, they're automatically certified once they graduate, once they pass the exam, I'm sorry. Exam eligibility students, all qualifying students of CEPH accredited schools and programs of public health, and you can ask your school or program for more information. After a student sits for the CPH exam, they'll be provisionally certified until their graduation date. After graduation, then they will become a full active CPH. Our third eligibility criteria is public health work experience, which includes individuals who have obtained a minimum of 5 years of public health work experience and at least a bachelor's degree in any concentration. This experience and the degree is verified by references and transcripts. Changes to the testing experience. The MBPHE has implemented all year long testing. We no longer have testing windows, so you can sit for the examination at any time as long as the testing facility is available and open. What's new? You can sit for the Cph exam all year long now, and because our testing vendor, AMP, was acquired by a new testing vendor called PSI Services, we have now received, I think it's 200 plus new testing facilities. Instant scoring has been implemented, so for anyone that sits for the Cph exam, they'll know whether they failed or passed right then and there, so they can reschedule or retest. Remote proctoring option is available. Besides sitting for the Cph exam by computer-based at a testing facility or setting up a paper and pencil examination on a campus or at a large organization, you can also now do remote proctoring, which includes bringing in computers from our testing vendor and sitting for the examination with your colleagues in a room and receiving your scores immediately after you submit. There are some changes to the recertification program as well. Some things are still the same. We still have the 50 recertification credits every 2 years, a biannual recertification process, and we still have the online reporting portal for you to log into and key in your recertification credits every 2 years and pay the fee to recertify. We've added digital badges. So for every credit that you enter, the more badges you get and the more colorful they get. It shows that you go above and beyond with it continuing education. And these badges are not only living in your portal, but they also live on the search for a Cph registry, which is on our website. So when employers go to find to hire a public health professional and they choose a Cph and they go to our website, they can verify that you're a Cph by going to our registry, and they can see that you've gone above and beyond in continuing education and that you really like to stay current in public health because of the digital badges. We also have Cph merchandise from Cafe Press. So now after you sit for the Cph exam and successfully pass, you can buy a hoodie or a t-shirt or a mug or a notebook. And lastly, beginning June 15th, we will be implementing Cph digital certificates. So no longer will we be sending out hard copy certificates. You will now receive a unique secured URL that will take employers or interested parties to your certificate online. The URL is secure and you with your Cph ID, and you will be able to see your certificate as well as upload this to your LinkedIn or your email signature. You can also track who's looking at your certificate. So if you're interested to know, I have this digital certificate, has it helped me? You can call MBPHE and we'll look up your certificate number and tell you how many times it's been looked at or downloaded. So that's a cool analytic new feature to the Cph. And other than that, that's all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kate. That was a great overview to kick off the webinar. Next, we have Allison Foster, the President of the National Board of Public Health Examiners, to discuss changes to the Cph exam. Allison, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. Let me make sure that I've got control of the keyboard. And I do not. So, Kate, I might have to have you flip the slides for me. Okay, so Kate, I'll just let you know. So we are making a number of changes to the Cph exam that I'd like to share with you. The exam itself is not going to change the format of the exam. The content is. That's really what we're going to talk about for the next few minutes. The exam itself is going to remain a timed exam, 4 hours, 200 items. It's a long exam. We actually, a few years ago, tried to figure out if we could shorten the exam just because 4 hours is quite a long exam. But the field of public health is so broad that there really was no good way to have a valid examination that was significantly shorter. And all the questions will remain multiple choice. So the exam coverage right now, this is essentially what the domains of the content outline look like. And these should be very familiar to you, particularly the core areas. Should look very familiar to you. We've had this content outline for some time. The full content outline actually is found on our website, and it's, I think, about 160 actual subtopics within these domains. So we've been testing under this, basically under this content outline since 2008. However, our board has had a number of discussions about at what point do we need to rethink our content outline. And part of the reason for that discussion is because it's always been very important to us that we are credentialing folks in what they do in public health. We want to make sure that our exam is relevant to public health practice. The other reason why is because we are interested in becoming accredited. So credentialing bodies also have accrediting bodies. So for those of you in academic institutions, we can sympathize. So we are close to the point where we can be accredited by NCCA. We've looked a number of times at their accreditation requirements. And except for one area, we believe that we are ready to be accredited. That area is that your content outline must be developed on based on a job task analysis, and ours was not. So we decided we needed to move forward in this area. So we conducted a job task analysis, started in 2014. And many of you, I am sure, know what job task analysis is, but essentially, for anybody who's not familiar with the idea, it's a survey of the workforce when you identify what somebody actually does in the workforce. And what you're trying to do is figure out sort of the common denominator, what tasks are common among members of that workforce. So we put together an advisory group that was comprised mostly of supervisors in public health. We wanted to have the folks that really knew what their employees were doing, and it was primarily practitioners. And we locked them in a room several different times over the course of spring, and they put together the actual tasks that we included in the survey. And it was about 200 tasks, but what you see right here are the domains that they created. They needed to roll them up into domains so we could just get our head around developing the survey. And you can see from the get-go, it looks really different than our current content outline. It does not look like the 5 core areas of public health that many of us are used to. So we developed the survey, and it did end up, just by coincidence, also being 200 tasks. And we asked individuals who responded to rate the individual tasks. Do you never perform this? It's not very important to your job. It's important, etc. We thought, a great response. We had 8,000 people start the survey. We had almost 5,000 people complete the survey. And the psychometricians we work with said that this was an excellent response rate, and we could feel confident about the results that we received. So we were really, really pleased with that. So we spent the next year or so doing lots of analysis. And essentially what we were doing is we were trying to poke holes in this to make sure that we got it right, that it made sense. So we did analysis every which way to Sunday. We presented to, I can't tell you how many professional organizations. We must have done 20 presentations around the country, presented to individual groups, presented to individuals so we could get them to listen to us. And we were trying to make sure to feel right. Was this representative? We didn't do a, had a standard sampling. There was just no way to do that, but we figured if we got the word out and talked to enough people, we would have a pretty good sense if our new domains make sense. And so I'm just going to show you a couple of examples of the type of analysis and just a couple of screenshots of what we ended up with. So this one just shows you how domains ranked by the responses. So the most highly ranked domain, the average responses to the task was ethics. That was critical analysis. You can see that the tasks were rated follows. We also look at lots and lots of ways with the domains and the individual tasks by academic background, by type of work an individual. This particular slide, which is just an example, shows you by employment level. And so we looked at the domains, how they move around as folks moved around with their careers. And you can see they're all color-coded. You can see, which was kind of interesting, is that ethics was the second most highly rated domain for entry level, and it goes down as the individual goes up in their career. And we had a long discussion about that, just trying to make sure, does this make sense? Is there a reason why? And what we ended up realizing is that it's not that ethics became more important, but other things just consumed more of their time as they went up in their career. But these are the sort of discussions that we had. We brought the advisory committee back several different times and had these in-depth discussions and had these sort of discussions when we presented to audiences. And this slide shows you the top 10 rated tasks. And here you can actually get a peek of what a task looks like. And you can see they're lengthy and they're descriptive and they're very specific. So the most highly ranked task, which this one I wasn't surprised about, is collect valid, reliable, quantitative, or qualitative data, was the most highly ranked individual task. So we took a look. Well, we got the results back. We brought the group back together twice more, I believe, and we actually looked at the individual tasks. So there were some tasks that just weren't rated very highly at all. There were some tasks where there was a very specific group rated that task highly, but the rest of the folks didn't. So we did remove some tasks. Not that they're not important to those individuals, but they weren't important overall. They weren't wouldn't be considered relevant for our credential. We had a few tasks once we kind of got through the process and could take a step back that just looked like they were redundant, so we consolidated those. Generally speaking, with the job task analysis, you can't introduce new tasks after you've done the job task analysis, and you really can't do any significant rewording, but in a couple of cases they were virtually identical. So after this analysis, we also went through the survey, and there was an open comment section where you could say, hey, I think this was missing, or this test was unclear, or whatnot. We had lots of comments, so we spent a whole meeting just going through those comments and made sure that nothing was missing. And so after that whole process, we reduced the number of tasks from 200 to 150, and what we're left with is what I believe are tasks that, according to the survey group, were common among that group. Then we had done so much manipulation of the tasks by that point, eliminated some, and had a little perspective as we stepped back and did some analysis, that we wanted to make sure that we put them together in the right groups. And so we basically did a factor analysis that looked at the way the tasks hung together based on the responses of the survey respondents. And at the end of the day, we ended up with these domains. So what we did next is we went out to many, many, many different groups and shared the actual tasks in these domains with these groups and made sure, did they see anything that concerned them, anything that didn't fit? And a lot of it was, were the tasks in the right domains? Did it make sense? And made another series of changes. And this is where we are now, is that we have finalized the domains and we have finalized the tasks within these domains that will actually show up on the new Cph exam. So, okay, oops, went one too far. Here we go. Along the way, we actually realized, some of this is starting to sound really familiar. So we lined up our domains with some other bodies of work that had been done. And we were really, really happy to see that there was a lot of similarity between where we were going and where the other groups had been going. And we'd already created our domains at this point, but so we all kind of breathed a sigh of relief when we realized that there's just an incredible amount of synergy going on with the public health workforce. So we were really, really pleased with that. And last fall, CPH announced its new domains for the Cph foundational competencies. And so we very quickly lined we hadn't actually seen them, so as soon as they came out, we lined our domains up with CPH, and we were just very pleased to see that they also had a lot of similarity with the CPH domains. So everybody's going in the right direction, or in the same direction. So what are we doing now? Well, so we are getting started now to do some item writing to fill in some gaps that we have on the exam. And I think that's one thing that we're going to be talking about quite a bit over the next year or so is how much is the exam changing? If you look at the content outline, and I'll point you in its direction at the end here, the content outline is going to look very, very different. The domains are different. The tasks are longer than our current content outline, and they're certainly much different. But public health has not entirely changed, so how much is the exam actually changing? So we did an analysis of our item bank. So we have a couple thousand questions in our item bank of questions and answer sets that we can use on the exam. And we had a number of volunteers, I think we had almost 100 volunteers, go through and match our items from the item bank up with the new tasks. And what we discovered is that I think it's a really nice distribution. So it shows that we have some tasks that we have lots and lots and lots and lots of questions ready for. So we won't be doing any item writing for those tasks. But we also have a number of tasks that our volunteers couldn't find items that match those tasks. And so on the right, these are the tasks that we won't have to do any writing for a while. And on the left, as the curve slopes up, you can see that we do have a number of tasks that don't have any items associated with them. And that's really where we're focusing our efforts right now. And I think just looking at the curve, what this tells me is that the exam is going to be changing, but not entirely. A lot of the items, the current question and answer sets that are on the exam right now will remain. They will stay in the bank, but there will be some new question and answers that we will be developing to include in future Cph exams. And to do all this, I'm not going to go through this one by one, but standardized test development is a pretty laborious process. So it takes about a year to get all the way around this loop. And we're going to have to, we ran the numbers to do it well, we're going to have to do this almost 2 times before we will have new exam forms ready based on the new content outline. So we've got quite a lot of work to do, and any of you interested in learning how to write a standardized test question, contact us after, because we're going to need lots of item writers. It's actually a really interesting process. So if you're even a little interested, send us a note and we'll share more information with you. And we're also very aware that folks are going to be worried about taking the exam under new content outline. The perception is that it's going to be, an unknown. What's it going to be like? So we are going to be developing sample questions. We have a practice exam that's live right now, and we will update that. We will be developing new curricula for the webinars that we give every year. We don't offer a study guide. We are not supposed to according to the accreditation standards. However, ASPPH is going to be completely updating the current Cph study guide. And APHA is also going to be developing a study guide based on the new content outline. So hopefully by early 2018, there will be lots of resources available for folks who want to sit for the exam under the new content outline. And this is the big reveal. We are thinking that we are going to launch the new content outline January 2019. So it gives us about a year and a half to get all this work done and for folks to start to prepare for it if they think they want to wait, sit under the new content outline. But as Kate mentioned, we now do 12-month testing, so if folks want to test under the current content outline, they'll have till December 2018 to sit for the exam. Okay, and I think that was the last slide. So Kathleen, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Allison. So now, as mentioned at the beginning, we have some time for question and answer. So I know we have some questions coming in already in the chat box, but if you do have a question, if you could just type it into the questions box on the right-hand corner of your screen, and then we'll be reading those aloud for Allison and Kate. So if it's okay with both of you, I'll start with a pretty straightforward one. Someone would like to know if it's possible to get a copy of the slides from the presentation today. I know we'll have the recording available, but what about the slides?
Absolutely.
And we'll have to, sorry, go ahead.
Can you distribute them to the, or should we do that?
We're happy to put them on our website, or we could send them out in the follow-up email along with the recording, if that's a possibility.
Okay, absolutely.
Excellent. Great. So yes, the slides will be available after the webinar. There's a question here about the eligibility for the exam. So for academic programs that are applying for certification through CPH, so I guess programs that are not yet accredited, are the students of those programs then not eligible to take the Cph exam yet?
They're not eligible until their program has been accredited, but once the program is accredited, anybody who's graduated within 3 years of the accreditation date would be eligible. So it just goes back 3 years of eligibility.
Okay, thank you. And then a question about the, I guess, the specifics of the exam itself. How do we respond to biostatistics questions on the exam with no calculator? Are these questions more theoretical? Are they multiple choice questions? So maybe if you could talk a little bit about how the questions look on the exam, that would be helpful.
Sure. Well, we try really hard not to have recall questions, so they should definitely be applied in nature. So for biostatistics, I'm just giving an example. They would give you a scenario and then would ask which, test, would you use a t-test or chi-squared or whatnot to solve this problem? What would be the appropriate method to tackle this problem? Those would be the sort of questions that we would ask, because you'd have to understand the basis behind each of the biostatistics tools. But yes, you do not need to do any math. If you can't do it on your head, we won't ask it on the exam.
Well, that's perfect. I would have a lot of trouble with those. And then I know I'm sort of going out of order of the time when the questions came in, but this one seems like a good follow-up for this particular question, and asked a little bit about the comparison between the current exam and then the new exam. So how would you, the question reads, how would you characterize the difference between, say, the 30 biostatistics questions in the current exam versus the questions that will appear in the new exam? Is there likely to be the same number of questions, about the same difficulty, or will there be changes? Is there any kind of general overview that you could provide there?
That's a great question. I think what we didn't show in the slide deck, and we need to add it in, is that our domains right now are weighted very heavily towards the core areas. On the new content outline, it's going to be 10% of each of the domains. So that might mean that the weights were different, but we also don't have a domain just for biostatistics. So that's going to be embedded within one of our domains. So we haven't mapped the actual item to items yet because we haven't built the forms. I would say that a lot of the questions are still going to appear, and that some of the 5 core, I think we will have less questions on the 5 core because now some of those 5 core questions are dispersed between 10 domains, which each have equal weight. But you know, the difficulty level of the questions now really shouldn't change. But we're going to be going through with this committee over the next 2 years and looking at every single question and making sure is it still relevant? Is it applied enough? We might find some questions that just seem out of place given the new content outline. So I think that there will be some changes, but we can probably talk more about that once we get further in the process of form development.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have one more question here. So if anyone else has questions, please feel free to type those in and we'll share them. This question relates to the job task analysis. Can you provide a breakdown of places of employment of those who responded to the job task analysis survey? So I guess what does that spread look like in terms of where people work?
So we couldn't share some information. We didn't even collect title or name of the employer because we weren't supposed to ask those questions in the job task analysis process, but we did ask for region where employers were and what type of work they did, and did they work at the national and the local level. So all that information is found on our website. Shortly after we finish the formal part of the job task analysis, we have a tab right off of our homepage called Job Task Analysis, and you can actually find the Job Task Analysis report. But if anybody's really interested in this data set, because it's, I think, a very unique data set, I don't think this has ever been done before, is we also will make the actual database of all the responses available. So you won't be able to look up your colleague who is XYZ title at, a health department, but you should be able to tell how folks responded who had similar responsibilities in certain parts of the country.
Very cool. Thank you. So our next question is, the direction of public health agencies is to get accredited through the Public Health Accreditation Board. And one of the main expectations is that agencies are to have a performance management system and quality improvement as a daily practice by all staff. Is performance management and quality improvement knowledge included in the Cph exam?
I would have to open up our content outline and take a deeper look. I assume that we could have questions written on that, even if we don't have a particular task that addresses that. But certainly management is program management is one of our domains. So I would assume that that we would have questions. And every year we recruit item writers from lots of perspectives, different backgrounds. We really look for diversity of our item writers for exactly that reason, because they can bring so many different perspectives to the exam and introduce new material that may not be required on the content outline per se, but if it's relevant to the field, we probably need an item written on it. Other than that, we can definitely go back and look at or we can direct you to the content outline. You can see if it's specifically there under a task, but even if it's not there under a task, doesn't mean we won't have questions on it. Hope that makes sense.
I guess we'll please feel free to type in if it doesn't make sense, and we'll try to do some follow-up. We have, so the next question asks about whether there is any grandfathering process, I guess, related to the exam if you have a PhD or a DRPH degree. Is there any differences with those types of degrees?
Well, the Cph exam is not just for folks with an MPH. Aside from the work eligibility, if somebody has a PhD or a DRPH from a CPH accredited school or program, you could have any degree from a CPH accredited school and you'd be eligible to sit for the exam. Grandfathering in general is a no-no in the credentialing world. You can't get accredited if you have grandfathering in place. But hopefully, if somebody has a PhD or DRPH that's not CPH accredited, they have the work experience. So hopefully they'd be able to fit under the work eligibility criteria.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm just reading the next question. So given the wide variety of public health tasks performed in different types of organizations, so for example, it could be anywhere from the government to a health insurer, how did NBPHE determine the representativeness of the job task analysis for the public health workforce? Any comments on that?
So yeah, this was a tough one. We really wanted to make sure that the respondents did represent the public health workforce. So our strategy at the time was just to get the word out far and wide. We sent the survey instrument to a couple hundred public health organizations. We had a database of individuals. We sent it directly to them. We even provided an incentive and raffled off a couple of iPads that were really big at the time to encourage people to complete the exam. We wanted to get a little excitement going about it. And so, like I said, that we did our best. It definitely is not a sampling, but that's why we did presentations at every organization we could think of, because we were, in an ideal scenario, we'd be presenting to the public health veterinarians, and they would all stand up and say, "This doesn't look right to us as a group." That didn't happen. It's not to say that if we did the job task analysis again tomorrow, the results would probably be a little different, because the respondents would be a little different. And that is why every 5 years, or part of why every 5 years or so, organizations are supposed to do a new job task analysis, because the field changes, but your population that responds is going to change as well.
Great. The next question is actually a good reminder for me, and I can probably answer this one myself, just based on the questions I've read so far. Asks, what does CPH or CEF stand for? So my apologies for not reading that out when I read the question. CEF is the Council on Education for Public Health, and they're the body that accredits schools and programs of public health. So my apologies. I know we always talk about not speaking in acronyms, and I'm guilty of it this time. Sorry about that. Does anyone, I think we've gone through all the questions that have been submitted so far, so I'll just maybe leave it for a few minutes to see if anyone else has any additional questions. Please feel free to type those in. And I don't know, as we've gone through the question and answer portion, Allison and Kate, if there's anything else that maybe isn't a direct question, but that pops to mind, that would be useful as we're waiting a minute. Okay, so we have another question about, I think this is a follow-on to the question about the PhD or DRPH. So this participant said, I was thinking more about the usefulness of having a Cph certification if you already have a PhD or a DRPH degree in public health. What are your thoughts about that and how those, I guess, relate to each other?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Kathleen? You
Absolutely. Sorry about that. The question here, I think, is perhaps a follow-up question to the one about the PhD or DRPH degrees. So it says, I was thinking more about the usefulness of having a Cph certification if you already have a PhD or a DRPH degree in public health. What are your thoughts about that?
So the Cph is not meant to compete with an academic degree. It certainly stands on our own. But, as Kate mentioned at the beginning, the Cph was created to professionalize the field. And folks in public health have so many titles, so many degrees, so many varied backgrounds that, it's important that we have a credential that ties it all together so that the DRPH and leadership can talk to the biostatistician with the PhD, that they each know a little about what they're doing. And it also makes the fact that they work in public health a little more identifiable. So there's a lot of merits for the field for folks to get credentialed. But as Kate also mentioned, it's pretty exciting to see that employers are really starting to respond and both encouraging their employees to be certified. They see the value of employees that know that they have to stay, not only pass an exam, but to stay certified with continuing education and professional development. The employees are starting to use that as a hiring tool as well. So I think there are a lot of benefits, and overall I just think it's really good for the field to have a credential that ties us all together.
Okay, great. Thank you. It doesn't look like we are having any additional questions come in at the moment. So I guess I'll ask Allison and Kate if you have any final thoughts. I know we have a few extra minutes here. If there's anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up for the day.
No, but thank you for having us. And certainly the content outline, the new content outline is going to be announced officially June 1, but you all can navigate to our website and take a sneak peek if you want to, and certainly get in touch with Kate or I if you have any follow-up questions. So thank you, Kathleen, for the opportunity.
Fantastic, and thank you both. I just, I'm kind of watching the question box while I say this, so if there are any last minute, please let me know. But in the absence of other questions, I'd like to conclude this afternoon by saying thank you both to the Council on Linkages between Academia and Public Health Practice and to you all from the National Board of Public Health Examiners for the presentation this afternoon, as well as to everyone who participated and joined us, I know, on this Friday before a holiday weekend. As we mentioned earlier, we will be sending a follow-up email to everyone who registered for the webinar with a link to the recording and the slides so that you can watch that back or share it with others. And please feel free to send any additional follow-up questions, as Allison just mentioned. So thank you very much for your time this afternoon. I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.